Are U.S. spy agencies keeping a close watch on your bank accounts? Well, if the Obama administration gets its way, they will be. The White House is reportedly drawing up plans to give all U.S. spy agencies full access to a massive database that contains financial data on all American citizens. Oh, my goodness. Joining us now to talk about this, Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, who's got some concerns about this proposal. Still on set with me, Steve McMahon, Jim Petlikoukas, and Don Luskin. AG Abbott, I am glad to have some serious concerns. Tell me about them.
Well, Larry, first, great to be back with you. But secondly, I'm deeply troubled actually by a trend that we're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. and imposed by the federal government. Largely, it's a concern about the erosion of constitutional protections and legal protections. But more specifically here, we're seeing the expansion of the federal government seeking more documents, more access into our records, here in particular banking records, in a very troubling way that I call this the black hole law. Because what the federal government is doing is expanding the size and scope of the black hole of information of your banking records that they will be able to access across the board, exposing people to even further threats. But the biggest problem there is what we're dealing with here is this law or this proposed rule coming out of the Treasury is creating more questions than it is answers.
Well, we don't know what the limits are. I mean, the way the deal works, Greg, as I understand it, the Treasury Department does have the authority when banks, let me just make this clear, when banks report what's called suspicious customer activity, quote unquote. Now, you tell me, as I understand it now, the CIA, the NSA, and the intelligence agencies, they could go right into the banks themselves? Is that what we're talking about?
First, you need to understand that the scope of information that is provided by banks is far larger than what most people think, because banks over-comply here, and it's going to provide access to the FBI, to basically all law enforcement agencies now, which includes the CIA, the NSA, and so many others. But also, Larry, what is undisclosed is my concern that this information now can be shared not with just law enforcement agencies here in this country, but also your personal records can be exposed worldwide, and people can be falsely accused of being involved in some kind of terrorism scheme without ever being afforded their due process rights.
Are there any limits to this at all, Mr. Abbott? Any limitations to this as far as you know?
You're hitting the nail on the head about one of my concerns, and that is there seemed to be an erosion of any limitations on this, and that's the biggest question. There used to be a gatekeeper here, Larry, and what is being proposed by this regulation is the removal of the gatekeeper so that you would have reduced limitations and greater access to people's private records.
General Abbott,
yes.
This was brought about by the Patriot Act, which, of course, as you know, President Bush was a big supporter of. Do you feel like this is a Washington problem, or are you suggesting that this is somehow a Democratic administration problem?
I think that it's been a problem for years now, but I think the problem has worsened over the past couple of years, where consistently we've seen this administration erode constitutional protections and almost act as though people don't have legal rights. I mean, the easy recent example, of course, is what happened with regard to the drone situation, where supposedly the administration was talking about being able to kill Americans on their own soil without due process. Here we're seeing the very same thing with regard to exposing Americans' records to even more law enforcement agencies without a gatekeeper, without any kind of checks or balances being put in place, without the traditional type of due process being afforded to people before they are investigated.
Are you suggesting, sir, that the administration shouldn't be able to use drones to target terrorists off of American soil?
I am not. What I'm saying is that American citizens have a constitutional right not to have their life taken on their own soil without due process being afforded to them.
And no drone attacks on our bank accounts.
Right.
So what is your
You think the drones are going to hit the banks?
On my bank account,
here's the greater concern, if you would.
On my bank account.
The reason why this discussion comes up is because there is this pretension as though the constitutional liberties that everyone assumed they had are not talked about in such a robust fashion.
But what is
whether it be banking records or your own life. Your life, your liberty, your property are at threat now.
I still don't get the concern about the international element, where there are going to be people dragged to The Hague. What's the national concern?
Because if you look at the way this puzzle is pieced together, this information can be shared with international agencies that can peer into your financial life. And the concern is, when you, as an American citizen, enter into private transactions, you would think that your information wouldn't be shared world around, and so your information is being exposed in ways you may not even perceive without your knowledge, without your consent, without your due process.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, thank you, sir. We appreciate it, as always. Up next on Kudlow, just